Gentlemen and monsters of all ages, how do you like numbers? I mean, generally speaking, I think most people who play Monster Hunter do like numbers, and for the most part, we can all agree that more numbers is more goodness. And so today, after all of the buffs to various skills that apply bonus procs of extra damage in Title Update 4, we thought it would be fun to share with you guys a handful of builds focused around getting as many bonus number procs from skills or set bonuses as possible, because it's just enjoyable. We'll have the full scale of RNG, from fully crafted builds up to ones that require set and group bonus on your weapon and RNG talismans too, and some variations along the way depending on whether you want to just have a generally good set that happens to have bonus numbers alongside it, or if instead you want to actually make the biggest numbers from those skills specifically and the set bonus procs. That said, before we go there are a number of unique skills or set bonuses in this, and we have videos going over the more obscure skills already up on the channel in great detail. The long and short of it is that all of these skills or set bonuses have a chance of creating a bonus number of damage on your screen when you hit the monster. New Udra set bonus requires you to have resentment active for it to work, and if you do, it will proc every 2.5 seconds as long as you're hitting the monster that frequently, no matter what. Rathlow's 2 set bonus, which is Scorcher, has a % chance to trigger every 2.5 seconds when you're hitting the monster, and on average it will proc every 5 seconds if you're constantly attacking. Flayer as a skill has a sort of build-up mechanic to it, sort of like how statuses work in the game, where you will hit enough times and then it will proc for a pop of bonus damage, and then Convert Element is another one that we'll be using here, which specifically works similarly to that, having a build-up requirement for it, but only building up from elemental damage specifically. The Legiacris set bonus as well, which is Leviathan's Fury over here. This also gives you an extra proc of damage, though a very infrequent one. It is just essentially one bonus number every 50 seconds or so. It doesn't add many numbers, but it is still an extra skill that can add extra numbers on rare occasion. That said, most of these skills and set bonuses have one extra rule on them, which is that there are certain attacks for each weapon type that cannot trigger them. So when playing these builds, you want to avoid any of these attacks on this list, as they simply will not do any of the bonus number procs. The list has gotten a lot shorter over the last few months over the course of multiple updates, especially with Title Update 4 making the list much smaller, but there are still a good few number of attacks that are important to know, just won't be able to trigger skill procs from any of these. On which note, Corrupted Mantle is technically another source of bonus numbers procs, so that is the choice of mantle for maximizing the theme of this build, on top of generally just being the best mantle for damage management in general, because it adds a lot of damage. Next up then, before we dive into the builds, these are meant to be applicable to as many weapon types as possible. This means that I won't cover weapon-specific skill setups, and I will talk very generally about the way that uptimes work for different skills in a way that I think applies to as many people as possible. That means if you take one of these builds and you play Longsword, for example, and you realize there's no quick sheath in it, you'll have to make adjustments to make quick sheath fit. If you play Bow and you want no maximum might, you can replace any of the maximum might decorations in the builds with something like Stamina Surge, which is much more relevant to you. These cannot possibly be optimized for all 14 weapons at the same time, so make the adjustments you need to from the templates that I offer, but I'll be presenting it as generally as I can, and despite having a sword and shield equipped, I won't be talking about sword and shield skills or mathing based around sword and shield skills either. So that just to say, take these more as a starting point for the build rather than the exact thing that I think you should use, because you likely will want to customize it a little bit for your weapon, but the purpose of these builds is fun, not meta, so just enjoy them as much as you want to. That said, the next question then is about weapon choice. Before we even get too deep in here, I did test Socio weapons and the White Flame Torrent weapon skill, because it is technically an extra number proc, but if you use it together with the Rathlow's set bonus, it's not an extra number proc, it just makes the same number procs a little bit bigger. And the overall damage was notably higher with Gogma Artian weapons, even in fully crafted setup that doesn't use the set or group bonus from the Gogma Artians. So White Flame Torrent technically just makes a number bigger, it doesn't add a separate number, so we won't be using that, but just to let you know, doing so, if you did want to use a Socio weapon, it would be around 13% less damage than the same build with a Gogma Artian weapon. That said, for the specific Gogma Artian weapon setup, this will depend on your weapon type, and I'm not going to try and tell you what to do for all 14 weapons at the same time. For some weapons, attack focus will be better. For some weapons, element focus will be better. For my personal math for these, I'll be using attack focus for every build except for the final one, because that build is a little bit more elementally leaning, so you would ideally have element focus for that one regardless. As far as what type of Gogma Artian weapon, you always want an element on it. You need to deal element damage to trigger Convert Element's bonus damage damage procs, so you need to have some amount of element to be able to do that. If you're only going to make one weapon as a Gogma Artian and one upgraded thing for the Gogma Artians, make it a dragon element weapon because that's the best choice for the most difficult monsters in the game. Fire element applies to more monsters, but less of the actually difficult ones. And a fun fact about this build is because so many of these procs aren't based on your own damage numbers, they are based off of time. The longer a hunt goes, the more value you get from these skills. So the harder a monster is, the more value you get from these skills. But ideally, if you really wanted to min-max this whole experience, you would have one Gogma Artian weapon for each different element, of course. As for set and group bonus, this doesn't apply to all the builds, of course, because they don't all use it, but everyone that does use the set or group bonus on the weapon wants Rathalos set bonus and the Lord Soul group bonus. For reinforcements, that is much more weapon specific. The most generally applicable is 4 attack boost rolls and 1 sharpness boost roll, but if you know that isn't the correct choice for your weapon type, then adjust it accordingly. All of the housekeeping out of the way then, let's get into our first build, which is fully crafted. There is no RNG requirements on gear of any kind, so no set or group bonus from the weapon, and no RNG talisman either. The armor itself is Raidao Gamma helmet and waist, new Udra Gamma chest, Guardian Rathalos Beta arms, and regular Rathalos Beta legs, both transcended for the decoration space. This gets us Rathalos 2 set bonus for the Scorcher skill procs, Raidao 2 set bonus for extra latent power duration, and the Lord Soul group bonus, which is 5% extra attack until you trigger the Guts effect. The talisman that we are using for this is the Convert Charm for 2 ranks of Convert Element, as this is one of the extra number proccing skills, which is sort of the main point of these builds. The best alternative talisman, if you want to use an RNG one to get a little bit more effective raw, but a little bit less on the number proc side of things, would be a whatever offensive skill that your weapon prefers from a talisman. I will be doing Attack Boost 3, as that is the answer that applies to most weapons, and then 1 Convert Element, rarity 8 talisman, so you can fit in the 4th rank of Attack Boost as well. I'll be doing the math based around the crafted talisman for this build, but the RNG talisman will also get an effective raw number showing up at the end of the math, just so you know what that would be too. As for decorations then, I'm accounting for 1 expected weapon specific skill, so things like Greatsword would want focus, some weapons want extra sharpness management, Insect Glaive wants airborne, all that type of stuff. So I will only be counting 2 weapon decoration slots as available for these builds, and in these builds it will always either be Critical Boost 5 or Critical Boost 3 with Critical Eye 3, depending on which combination of the two led to better results in the math. But just to explain the logic of weapon slots quickly here. For armor decorations then, 3 Throttle Jewels to get full ranks of latent power as our biggest source of affinity. We have 1 Tenderizer Jewel for an extra rank of weakness exploit, 1 Counter Jewel for the final rank of counterstrike, 1 Flayer Jewel so we can get Flayer number procs as an easy extra number source, and then 1 Chain Jewel for 1 rank of burst, as the majority of weapons thrive having 1 rank of burst. We also have 2 1-slot sockets left open in the build that you can use for utility in any way that you desire. Full skill list on the screen here. It's not a lot of skills, but it is a very effective small grouping of skills. For the math, I will go in depth for this first build, but much faster for the rest of them once you've seen my process. And it's worth noting that I won't be factoring in the skills that trigger bonus damage procs into the math itself, as those are much harder to actually quantify. So essentially, the effective raw is what your weapon itself will be able to do, and then you also have all of those extra damage procs triggering on top of it. And you'd think that might mean that the effective raw would be way lower than meta builds, but it's surprisingly not as far off as you might think. That said, 257 attack on a Gogma Artian with attack focus and 4 attack reinforcements at max quality. We have Lord Soul group bonus, which is an extra 5% of weapon attack as a base, which is 12.85 in this specific case, bringing us to 269.85 attack. An important note for later builds is that if you have 2 attack percent increases, they do not count each other when you multiply them. They both are based off of the 257 weapon attack number. So if you have Lord Soul and attack boost 4, it's 5% of 257 plus 2% of 257, not both of them compounding upon each other. We then add on our flat attack bonuses from skills, of which we have very little. I'm not going to attribute an uptime to counterstrike in this setup, just counting full value, because a lot of weapons can have very high uptime, but if you are a weapon that doesn't actively trigger it with things like offset attacks or hyper armor, this realistically will be closer to 50% uptime. I also am counting burst at the full 5-hit bonus of burst, as a large number of the weapons can consistently achieve that, but there are also weapons that will only get the first hit bonus of burst as well. That to say again, the math here is made to be very general. It's made to apply to as many things as possible, not to apply to your specific weapon situation. So take it all with a little bit of a grain of salt. That said, attack totals up to 302.85. For affinity, negative 10% on the weapon as a base because of attack focus, increased by 33% for latent power 5, which we are counting at 66% uptime. Generally speaking, without Ray Dow 2-set bonus, we will count latent power as 50% uptime, but this build has Ray 2-set, so we count it at 66% uptime instead. We have 3 weakness exploit for 15% increased affinity when hitting relevantly weak parts, and then 30% bonus affinity from maximum might rank 3, which again, most weapons can use, but not all of them. This combination then would put us at 68% affinity. We are accounting for 5 critical boost in this setup, which means critical hits are 40% increased damage. So a 68% chance of a critical hit becomes 27.2% bonus damage on average. Apply that to our attack and you get 385.23, then increase that by 32% for the white sharpness damage modifier up to our final effective raw of 508.5, which is really not bad at all, considering all of the extra damage you're going to get from Flayer procs, from convert element procs, and from Scorcher procs in the setup as well. For reference, with an RNG talisman on this build, it would hit 530.5 effective raw, which is honestly quite good, considering the sort of meme build archetype that we were going for to begin with. For element then, just to talk about it quick here, every weapon type has a different amount of base element on their Gogma Artian, but in this build we are gaining, for most weapons, 60 element from burst rank 1 as a bonus. Then if your weapon is dragon element specifically with 2 convert element, you will get 120 bonus element while convert element's secondary effect is active. That effect has a maximum uptime of 57%, so we count that as 68.4 extra element if you have dragon. This means that you get 128.4 bonus element from our skills with dragon, otherwise only 60 bonus elements. Next up, I'll run through this one super quickly. I won't even get math done past telling you that it is extremely comparable to the previous build, except that it loses a little bit of raw attack in exchange for gaining a little bit of resentment and the new Udra set bonus as well. That means that this procs even more bonus numbers than the first build does, but only if you consistently have resentment active, which essentially can apply to weapons that have offset attacks or hyper armor attacks like greatsword, shoulder tackle, or weapons that take a lot of chip damage too, like guarding weapons outside of perfect guard specifically. If you can trigger resentment frequently, this build will probably be a little bit better than the first one, and if you can't trigger resentment frequently, then it won't. That's pretty much what it boils down to. So I wanted to give you this option as well, even if I'm just going to blast past it super quickly, again, not even doing math for it. After that, we have one of our 2 main RNG requiring builds, and the first will be the one that has the most effective raw of any of these builds, while also having a whopping 5 different skill or set bonuses that can proc extra numbers on screen. So this is the true embodiment of what this playstyle was meant to be, really. This does require a set and group bonus on your weapon, which I did talk about earlier, and I will be showing it and mathing it with an RNG talisman. But for this one, you would just put on Convert Charm, again, if you don't have the RNG talisman, and I'll put the crafted talisman's effective raw at the end of the math section for comparison too. That said, the armor for this one is Legiacris Beta Helmet and Pants, then New Udra Gamma Chest and Waist, and Guardian Rathlos Gloves transcended up for decoration space. The ideal charm is the same RNG charm that we talked about earlier, being 3 attack boost or whatever your weapon might prefer over that, and then 1 convert element, ideally also as a rarity 8 talisman. For decorations, this build wants 3 critical boost and 3 critical eye rather than 5 critical boost. It just maths out a little bit better. We have 2 tenderizer jewels to reach 5 ranks of weakness exploit, 1 resentment jewel so we can have 1 rank of resentment, and then 1 Flayer jewel so we can get Flayer procs, 1 throttle jewel for a bit of latent power, 1 counter jewel to get the final rank of counterstrike, and 1 mighty jewel for the final rank of maximum might. Then 3 1-slot sockets are left for you to fill with utility of your choice. Full skill list is on screen, but this basically just piles on as much raw attack affecting skills within the limitations of also creating a bunch of bonus numbers. This does not focus on the size of the bonus numbers created by the skills, but just the amount of bonus numbers, while also doing a lot of damage with the weapon itself at the same time. That said, for the math on this one, going through it much quicker, 257 base attack on the weapon up to 275 from our percent attack increase skills. We add on flat attack bonuses for a total attack of 320.5, negative 10% affinity on the weapon, boosted up to 78% on average due to our skill setup. We have 3 critical boost in this build, so critical hits are 34% increased damage. 78% chance of that happening means an average damage bonus of 26.52%. Apply that to our attack total to get 405.49, then an extra 32% increase for the white sharpness damage modifier up to 535.3 effective raw, which is not a huge increase over the previous build in effective raw, but we have 2 more set bonus triggering extra numbers, so slightly more weapon damage, and also leaning even more into the wacky theme of the build that we're going for here. For comparison, this build with the crafted convert element talisman would be 513.3 effective raw, which is a decent chunk lower, but not a crazy amount. For element on this build, again, base element depends on your weapon type, but we get plus 80 from burst, as it is rank 2 burst instead of rank 1, and with only one convert element, still same uptime as before, you would get an average of 45.6 bonus dragon, only for dragon weapons specifically, of course. Then we have our final build of the day, and this one is focused on making the number procs themselves bigger, as well as just having much better element damage for any weapon types that favor element over attack builds. If you wanted to use this one for more elven element focus, but not necessarily dive as deeply into the procs, you could replace some of the Flayer in this build with something like weakness exploit or latent power, for example, but this is the version that I want to show you because Flayer is actually quite good right now, and that's sort of like the main point of what we're doing today. That said, this requires set and group bonus RNG to work, and like the last build, I'll be showing it based around an RNG charm. I will math around the RNG charm, but the crafted talisman to use instead would again be to convert element, and I'll put that version's end effective raw at the end of the math for comparison. For the armor on this one, Guardian Rathalos Beta helmet, transcended up for decoration space, new Udra Gamma chest, Gogmazios gloves, either version of them, dahaad Gamma waist, and then Gogmazios legs, either version of them. For the charm, best RNG charm would be one convert element with either 3 attack or whatever your weapon would prefer to that. For decorations, this is another one that prefers to have 3 critical eye and 3 critical boost instead of just 5 crit boost. We have 4 Flayer decorations, so we can fit 4 ranks of Flayer, as Flayer is again currently the strongest of the bonus number procs to sort of focus on, and this build is emphasizing the size of bonus numbers more than the amount, so Flayer 4 hits for 300 damage every time that it procs, which is actually quite solid. We have 1 counter jewel to finish off counterstrike and a mighty jewel to finish off maximum might. Then you have 3 1-slot sockets for utility to use however you would like. Full skill list is on screen. This one does get to have 5 agitator, which is nice for its raw, given that we've sacrificed a fairly large amount of affinity to get 4 ranks of Flayer in here. And of course, this build does also get the Gogmazios 2-set bonus, which isn't more numbers, but it is a nice element damage scaling option to have on our more element leaning focused build. For the math on this one then, as this is an element leaning build, I will math based around an element focused Gogma Artian weapon instead of an attack focused Gogma Artian weapon, as that would be a little bit more fitting, just so you know why the numbers will look a little bit different. But basically it's just minus 10 attack, plus 10% affinity, and then we gain some bonus elements as well. That said, 247 attack, which goes up to 264.29 from our percent increasing bonuses. Add on our flat attack increases, and you hit 318.29 total attack. For affinity, we have 0% as a base on the weapon, climbing up to 56.75% total affinity on average. We are accounting for 3 critical boosts, so critical hits are 34% bonus damage, and a 56.75% chance of that happening makes for an average damage increase of 19.3%. Apply that to our total attack and you get 379.7, then increase that by a further 32% for the white sharpness damage modifier, up to 501.2 effective raw. So essentially the lowest raw attack of any build that we've talked about, but not by like a crazy amount, and in return you get 300 damage every time that it procs from Flayer instead of 140 damage procs from Flayer, and we get a fair bit of extra element on it too. With crafted talisman, this would be 480.8 instead, which is an even further drop down. But to mention the element real quick here, we do need to insert a weapon element for this one, as there is a percent element increase. So we'll just use sword and shields element focus Gogma Artian base number, which is 320 element. Gogmazios 2-set bonus is 20% extra element when the monster is enraged. We estimate enrage uptime at 65%, so we'll call it a 13% increase, which puts us at 361.6 element. We also get some flat element from Gogmazios 2-set, so same parameters, gets us an extra 13 from that. Then we have the 60 element bonus from burst and 45.6 bonus element from convert element if you are using dragon element specifically. We divide the total by 10 for the true element number, which is 43.5 for most elements or 48 if dragon specifically. That pretty much does it for today, everyone. A collection of builds focused around having as many bonus damage numbers from your skills and set bonuses as possible. Some of them have low RNG, some of them have a lot of RNG required. Some of the builds are focused around just having the numbers around while being strong in general. Some of the builds are more focused on making the numbers themselves stronger. All in all, I think every one of these builds is fun to play with and mess around with at the very least, so I also hope you enjoy playing them if you try them out for yourselves. Like if you liked the video, subscribe with the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice. to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage is, goodbye.